Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. A lot of people have asked for more info on intermittent fasting and just fasting in general. And, as far as just, health-related issues and diet and how we could optimize ourselves, especially when you're thinking about these times. Being in these times are so much different than so many other times, throughout history. Like, we have just come out of a period in which there has been more of an abundance of food than we've ever experienced in our history, as far as we know, going back. And so an abundance of food, and unfortunately, in many cases, an abundance of very unhealthy food has led to so many problems, like, so many cases of cancer, diabetes, insulin resistance, obesity, so many modern diseases that were still around in the ancient days, but not necessarily as prevalent. And of course, there were other diseases that are no longer around now that were taking lives and causing people to live shorter lifespans than they do now. But there are really amazing benefits to intermittent fasting and fasting in general. So 7 things that happen to your body when you fast. And intermittent fasting is something that is really taking the world by storm. As it says here, it's gaining huge popularity as a dietary option because it's actually so simple. So what happens to your body when you fast? Okay, so first off, the first few hours of fasting are pretty normal for most people since your body's going through the regular process of breaking down glycogen and storing glucose as a fuel for energy. Usually about 25% of it goes right to your brain while the rest supports red blood cells and muscles. Ketosis, so after about 5 to 6 hours, depending on where the sugar levels in your blood are at, you will reach the stage of ketosis. And so during which your energy levels are supported by ketone bodies in your blood. So your metabolism switches and you go from basically your body feeding itself off of glucose to feeding itself off of the ketones. And so the ketones, when you're burning ketones, the added benefit is you're breaking down body fat. And body fat is where toxins are stored. And so you're actually temporarily releasing more toxins into the bloodstream, but overall you are basically detoxifying yourself. So this is the moment when actual fasting starts, and it's a desirable state to be in for people who are fasting for weight loss. This state can also be reached by staying on a ketogenic diet, which is based on a high-fat, low-carb diet. And really, in so many ways, and I've done it before myself, I've done a ketogenic diet with intermittent fasting, and it is super powerful when you combine those two things. And it's actually very, very simple if you're a meat eater or if you also take in dairy products. It gets a little bit more complicated if you're vegetarian or vegan, but it still can be done. And in some ways, I feel that a vegetarian-based ketogenic diet with intermittent fasting could be, like, for some people, one of the most superior diets to be on. And we shouldn't even use the word diet. It should be more of a lifestyle that is adopted. So, cholesterol and uric acid cleanup. During the process of ketosis, several more important things will happen to your body. Your body will release cholesterol and uric acid into the bloodstream, which is a part of the detoxification process in the body. During this stage, you may experience headaches, dizziness, fatigue, skin rashes, muscle pain, and joint aches in some rare cases. At the end of this stage, the pain will be lessened and blood pressure will drop. The calcification process, cholesterol and mucoid plaque, will be reduced. So resting of the digestive system. Since your food intake has been reduced, the digestive system may take a rest. But since the digestive system and the processes take time, it's never fully stopped during intermittent fasting, only during a prolonged one. And it's also emotional detox. So After the first 6 hours of fasting, you will find yourself feeling hungry, maybe even overwhelmed. Depends on the person, depends on how toxic you are. People that are more toxic, that are eating more refined foods, eating more junk foods, it's going to be way tougher on you than somebody that's living off of, healthy organic produce and perhaps lean meats that are also organic. So realize that emotionally you might have a little bit of a roller coaster, and at first it could be a little bit tough, and then there's going to be a high that comes, and that high is actually very beautiful in many ways, and I find it leads to inspiration for me. And so I truly enjoy not having breakfast and basically having coffee in the morning. Yes, I'll admit I get a little wired on the coffee, and I especially like it with some coconut oil in it to make some bulletproof coffee. And that just really seems to get me very sharp, and I do my best thinking in the morning in that state. And so you have intermittent and prolonged fasting. Intermittent fasting is a method of fasting mostly used by people who would like to regulate their weight and calorie intake. The practice involves eating during certain hours of the day and abstaining from food during others. This helps regulate mindless munching and also lets you eat your daily calorie count during eating hours. The most popular schedule for intermittent fasting is eating 8 hours and 16 hours of fasting. So it can either be in bulk or split throughout the day. Prolonged fasting is fasting during which you consume only drinks, mostly water, sometimes juice, and I wouldn't even call it's different. There's juice fasting is different, and it has its place as well. And for some people, juice fasting is a better way to go. Water fasting is something that can be very, very, very hard on you, especially if you have been eating a lot of processed foods that will cause your body to be very toxic. Also, juice fasting can really help you alkalize your body, especially if you're really leaning mostly on vegetable juices, not so much fruit juices, and then select fruit juices as well, because some are much higher in sugar content than others. So if you're primarily doing it relying on the vegetables for your juices, then it could actually really accentuate and accelerate the process. Also, if you're doing basically soups that are going to be like root vegetable orientated and just taking in the broth, because that also would be a very positive way to quickly alkalize the body. And it's one of those situations where, like, to give you for instance, cancer loves an acidic environment. It hates an alkaline environment. It really can't even function in an alkaline environment. So, always trying to get ourselves a little bit more alkaline is good. Of course, there's a natural pH range that we should be in. It's not really super easy to get yourself to be overly alkaline, but it's very easy to be overly acidic. And the other benefit with being a little bit more alkaline is you're more conductive, and we are bioelectromagnetic beings. And so the minerals that are going to make your body more alkaline are going to increase the conductivity of the life force throughout the body as well. And this is definitely another benefit. And so here's some of the benefits. It's the perfect tool to use when trying to control your weight. It's a good way to normalize insulin sensitivity and as a result prevent type 2 diabetes. It normalizes GHRELIN levels and helps to discipline your hunger. It lowers triglyceride levels, lowering the risk of heart disease. It may slow down the aging process, which it definitely does. A lot of studies have showed that. Could help with skin conditions, could help normalize the digestive system. It gives you a reset, is what it does. It gives you a reset, which is something that we do need. And I have found that it could be, especially a prolonged fast or a juice fast, is usually what I need to do when I've gotten kind of bad on my daily intake of foods. Like if I start gravitating towards eating things that I know are not quite as good, this will always be a way to reset myself mentally, emotionally, as well as physically. So why intermittent fasting is the best thing that ever happened to your metabolism? It protects your brain. And in this case, this author, their son Grant, suffered from a severe traumatic brain injury after being hit in a hit-and-run accident. I researched everything that could support his recovery. Intermittent fasting combined with a ketogenic diet was an amazing combination that made a huge difference in helping to heal his brain. Slowing aging again, and that comes up time and time again. Think about it, oxidization, and the more food we take in, it's just basically, it's just like putting miles on the engine. It's going to wear you out. Fights cancer. Studies have shown this time and time again. Fasting can prevent cancer and even slow down or stop its progression. Can also kill cancer cells while boosting the immune system. Increases insulin sensitivity, decreases the risk of cardiovascular disease, boosts energy, enhances mental focus. And again, so you have to find what is the right way to do it for you. So, intermittent fasting is the easiest way to do it, and then you might explore prolonged fasting later. And again, this is another article. So, I mean, it's so well known, the benefits of intermittent fasting. So well known, and not really just even about losing weight. It has so many more benefits than just that. And perhaps one of the biggest is in its fight against cancer, because cancer's cells are the first thing that's broken down when the body needs protein, when it needs amino acids, and it's not getting it from its food intake. Those are the first cells to get broken down. It's just the most efficient way to do it. So many of us, especially those of us that like weightlifted and were concerned with muscle mass and being able to push a lot of weight, we always thought we had to take in more and more protein. You have to have protein all the time. And, you definitely do need protein, but we have found, like, if you're talking long-term health benefits, you want to monitor how much protein you're really taking in, because protein is tough on the body to digest. It creates more uric acid. It's going to wear out the body as well. So there's this right balancing point that you have to achieve. Because ultimately, more protein definitely will speed up your metabolism. So if you want to get a lean, to be a lean, mean fighting machine, it is one way to go, is to increase your protein intake. It will make you feel in many cases stronger. But the long-term health benefits might not be there, and actually it could be counterproductive, because you're going to be wearing out your body prematurely. You're going to be causing more uric acid in the system, stressing your kidneys, and also giving cancerous cells the opportunity to have plenty of material to divide and grow as well. So that's something else to take into consideration. And typically, the body loves to run off of glucose. That's the easiest way to do it. But when we switch the body into ketosis, then it's an automatic body fat regulating system, and it's an automatic detoxification as well. So it's called flipping the metabolic switch and going from one to the other. You will definitely, whether you're doing prolonged fasting or intermittent fasting, it will definitely help you with weight loss. However, it's definitely easier for people to do intermittent fasting and taking advantage of natural cycles as well. So if you are like me, I like to get whatever work done I can get done in the morning, and many of us have schedules, that are very, very, very varied from one to another. Just to give you, like what I find easy is I'll typically go to bed like around midnight. That's probably average for me. I know it should be a little earlier to follow the natural sun cycles, because that's also one of the things that is really healthy, is to follow the sun cycles and basically, rise when the sun is rising and slow down when the sun sets. Not that you're going to necessarily sleep 12 hours, stay awake 12 hours. but it's just better for your circadian rhythm overall. But each of us is different with that. So for me, typically going to sleep around midnight-ish, and say if I got up at 8-ish, I wouldn't eat until maybe 12, 1, 2, sometimes even later, and then maybe stop eating at about 8 o'clock or something like that. So really you're looking. I found it very easy to do a 6-hour window. Most people do the 16-8, but you could do a 6-hour window. You could do even less. I made amazing progress doing basically a 20-hour fast and eating in a 4-hour window. And there I was basically eating between 2 and 6 during the day, and otherwise fasting. And it was just amazing, the changes in the body. And I want to approach this from a different point of view than a typical point of view of wanting to lose fat, maybe gain some muscle, get in shape. I want us to also look at what we're facing. So what we're facing is going to be increased food costs because of everything going on with the weather. We see crop losses everywhere. We're also going to have shortages. Shortages are coming. And so part of this whole mindset I want to get you guys ready for is preparing for these things. So mentally, you're tougher if you're used to eating in a certain window and not eating all day long constantly. And in some time periods, we've been told it's better to graze and just graze constantly. And so as we've learned more, we've realized that there's positives and negatives with every system that comes along. But when you look at the SAD diet, the standard American diet, your typical Western diet, it does lead to a lot of problems, including inflammation. And inflammation is really one of the main disease causers in the body. And some would say it's pretty much, it's it. Everything is going to stem out of inflammation. So this is one of the ways to give your body a rest. And you will find, like, another thing that this will benefit is basically allergies. It'll help decrease your allergies. There's so many positive things that you will do here, you will experience as you go through this. So it's up to you to find what's comfortable for you. So maybe at first, if you wanted to try it, go with the 16-8. So basically, if you're going to allow yourself to eat, then say eat between 12 p.m. and 8 p.m. Or maybe you eat between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m., all depending on what your schedule is like. But give yourself a solid 8 hours of no eating at all. And so when we say that, we also mean don't take in, say, milk, or orange juice, or anything that's going to be calories, So think of it in terms of no calories are coming in those times of fasting. So what can you have in times of fasting? You could have basically water, tea, black coffee, anything that has no calories to it. Beware of artificial sweeteners. You don't want to ever take those things in because they're just toxic to the body. They're another thing that's going to cause inflammation. Perhaps stevia if you had to. It's also very easy to reset your taste buds. And so if you did do a prolonged fast, say 3 days or more of just water, or even just vegetable juices, 3 to 5 days. 5 days is a very good one if you're going to do just vegetable juices, and maybe broths, like veggie broths with no solid food. That will give you a complete reset in your body. It's going to help you with detoxifying. It's going to help you fight cancer. It's going to help so many things. It's going to help your pancreas, your insulin resistance. It's just such a positive thing. It's going to also help you spiritually. It's going to take you into a different zone spiritually. You will be thinking differently. You'll be sharper, clearer, more focused. It is really amazing how the changes come. And this is Thomas DeLauer, who is one of the most famous guys in the intermittent fasting world. And, you know, he's a really big muscular guy, and that's what he does, intermittent fasting and ketogenic diet. And now, ketogenic, you could think of it in two different ways, basically. Some people will think, oh, you're doing a ketogenic diet, so you're eating nothing but steak and bacon and eggs, right? And there's different ways of doing it. And so we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and take in foods that are toxic to our systems. And like if you are eating meat and you're eating something like bacon, I mean, bacon that has nitrates in it. Well, nitrates are the biggest problem right there. Nitrates are going to cause all sorts of health problems. So, you know, get uncured bacon. If you are eating meat and you got to have your bacon, make sure it's uncured, no nitrates. And it's the same thing with any meat that you eat. You want to make sure there's no steroids, no antibiotics, no growth hormones. Because if you're eating standard meat, like right off the shelf, especially, you know, beef, it's so full of so many toxins. It's a shock to your system. Yeah, totally. So keep that in mind. And even though it's very, very difficult to do, you have to take some time to think it through. It is possible to actually be vegan and do a ketogenic diet with intermittent fasting as well. And not necessarily recommending that. Everybody is different. You have to take into consideration your blood type as well. And I do personally believe blood type has a lot to do with what we should eat. And that's another whole topic. And I know I've talked about the blood type diet as well. And so there's a lot of different things to take into consideration. If you're a type O, it's going to be much tougher for you to be vegetarian or vegan. And so you might find actually a diet that's ketogenic and eating some meat is going to feel great to you. Now I have type O's that are clients that are going through a spiritual awakening, and all of a sudden they can't eat meat anymore. There's something that just simply makes them repulsed to meat. And so all of a sudden they're in this big conundrum because their body's craving protein and they're used to eating meat, and then all of a sudden they just can't tolerate meat anymore because it feels gross to them, because they're going through a spiritual growth cycle and a spiritual awakening. Not to say that you can't have a spiritual awakening and still eat meat. It just seems that most of the time people going through spiritual growth times in their life will often find an aversion to meat. They might not stop completely, but they'll kind of steer away from it. And so it all depends on blood type. Now type A is natural vegetarian, so type A's are going to find it very easy to skip out on the meat. And you know, they'll find it very easy to do a vegetarian diet. Now a lot of people, when they switch to a vegetarian diet, they'll simply eat a lot of processed foods. You know, they might buy the Boca burgers, they might start to rely a lot on rice and pastas and things like that. Well, you know, there are pastas out there now that are much better for you. There's like red lentil pastas and quinoa pastas and so many other different types out there that you could experiment with as well. Some people tolerate legumes really well, and beans and lentils are fabulous foods for both the prepper and also just nutritionally. You know, they have an abundance of protein, they have abundance of iron, they have abundance of carbs, they have abundance of fiber. They're very, very inexpensive. They go a long way. They store well. If you could tolerate them, that's wonderful, because they'll save you money and really do well by you nutritionally at the same time. And for me, I always find that it's all about how you season things and dress things up. And whether it's chicken in a recipe or tofu or just veggies, to me it's all about whatever that sauce is, you know, whatever it is, how you're seasoning it with fresh herbs and, you know, certain spices. Like, you know, I probably have 100 different spices in the house because I just love spice and flavors, and it's awesome. So fasting, both types reduce inflammation. Inflammation leads to dis-ease. It leads to disease. So both types, intermittent and regular prolonged fasting, they're both going to help you overcome inflammation, which is really going to fight disease. So it's a wonderful way to do this. And when you think about it, intermittent fasting makes all the sense in the world, because every single day your body is going to start breaking down cancerous cells. Every single day your body is going to be fighting cancer naturally, just as a part of the regular cycle. Every single day your body is going to be detoxifying itself naturally, every day. That's a beautiful thing. And it's also going to be burning the fat stores, which is going to also help you stay leaner. Also a beautiful thing that's going to do nothing but help you stay healthier. All the studies ever done always show that caloric restriction leads to a longer, healthier life. It's really very simple. So if you have been getting by on a 2,000 calorie diet, maintaining your weight, and you switch and you take in 1,500 calories and your body adapts and get used to that, you're going to live longer and you're going to be healthier and you're going to have less chance of disease. It's just a fact. Also, in these times that we're heading into, when we're going to have probably food shortages, I wouldn't even say probably, they will be coming, food shortages, increased cost of food, and just scarcities overall. If you could get yourself adapted to this in the first place, it's not going to be as much of a shock to the system. So, and I view this as prepping. This is part of our prepping program. Getting yourself ready for it. Better now than later. And, just want to tell you guys, anybody that's still drinking soda or eating anything that the first ingredient is high fructose corn syrup or any sort of sugar, white flour, you gotta stop it, because it's definitely hurting your health. It is not helping you in any way, shape, or form. And so these times are going to make us tougher people, more resilient, more durable. They are going to prep us in many different ways, mentally, emotionally, physically, in all ways. So we can get ready in this way and prepare ourselves for what is coming. And the other thing is spiritually, like this right here. Why did Jesus fast? Now, why do you find that Jesus fasted, Buddha fasted, Muhammad fasted, all these yogis and gurus fasted, all these saints fasted? Fasting cleanses the spirit, and it just removes not only physical toxins from our system, but spiritual toxins as well. And so it also takes us into a higher vibratory state of being. It's a detoxification, mentally, spiritually, as well as physically. So it's all those things. And you could find cases of fasting all throughout Scripture. You could also find it all throughout basically all the other religions and philosophies in the world as well. So there is this spiritual viewpoint for this too. And I think I've shared with many of you guys before that was my first case of it. For fasting. It was fasting for, I decided I was brought up Catholic. I was going to fast for Good Friday, and I wasn't going to eat till Easter dinner. And so I just decided to do that on my own. I think I was maybe about 10. And I did. And then it just kind of became a regular thing for me, and I've done it periodically on a regular basis. And have found that the easiest way to do things is really through intermittent fasting. And I just find it more enjoyable, honestly. It has gotten to the point where it's more enjoyable because I just feel so much sharper. So much sharper. It's night and day. And I love that feeling of clarity that comes through. And it also feels like an emotional clarity as well as a physical, tangible physical clarity. It's also an emotional clarity. And so, there's so many cases that are so similar. Why, did Christ and Buddha go and fast for 40 days, And this article is also talking about 40, and there's so much numerology that we could talk about as well, as far as that goes. Now this article is Mastering Intermittent Fasting on a Plant-Based Diet. And so I'm going to have all these links for you guys to check it out. And so this will give you some ideas if you are plant-based and how to do it. And you know, it's tougher to be ketogenic on a plant-based diet, but it is still possible. And so everybody has to find where are they gravitating to? What feels better for you? And this is a PDF. And so it's a 13-page PDF, and it's all on intermittent fasting. Gets into a little more detail, basically the fed state and the fasted state, insulin resistance, fat adaptation, gets into so many other things too. So I have a PDF for you guys here as well to check out. And over here, Confessions of a Supply-Sided Liberal. And you know, I'm not saying that I am a supply-sided liberal at all, but here, how fasting can starve cancer cells while leaving normal cells unharmed. And so, very, very good info in here. Cancer as a metabolic disease. There you go, right there. That says a lot, and we have to think of it in those terms. Metabolically damaged cancer cells can't produce as many ADP energy packets from each molecule of glucose. They can still produce ADP from the initial splitting of a glucose molecule into two molecules of called glycolysis, which does not use oxygen. But they are not good at producing ATP from combining oxygen with the products of glycolysis to produce additional ATP. This means that metabolically damaged cancer cells need to take in more glucose than normal cells to produce a given amount of ATP energy packets. They are more glucose hungry than normal cells. And so it helps cancer cells if glucose is abundant. So there you go. You know, don't drink that Coke, that Pepsi, that Dr. Pepper, whatever it is, especially if you are a cancer sufferer or survivor. You have to watch out for the simple sugars, for sure. So as an alternative to splitting glucose, cancer cells with damaged metabolisms can make ATP by using the energy in glutamate, an amino acid human bodies can make from many other amino acids. Two key messages are that anything that boosts glucose or glutamate availability leads to better fed cancer cells. Eating sugar or other easily digested carbohydrates is a good way to boost glucose levels in the bloodstream. Indeed, this is exactly what the glycemic index for different foods is designed to measure. Eating high-protein foods is also a way to make amino acids that can be turned into glutamate highly abundant. It would be great to have measurements of a glutamate index for the effect of different foods on glutamate availability parallel to the glycemic index. So, it says here, I'm intrigued by the cancer cell's ability to burn glutamine for energy in conjunction with the evidence for an association between the protein intake and cancer that T. Colin Campbell and Thomas M. Campbell emphasize in the China study. So, because you can basically turn protein into basically a source of energy for the cancerous cells. Whereas if you're going to be in ketosis, they're not going to have a supply of energy to feed them. So cancer being, the second most common form of death in the world, it's very, very advantageous to eat a diet that does not support the proliferation of cancerous cells, and to actually take on a lifestyle that actually inhibits the proliferation of cancerous cells. Very, very beneficial. So while the thoughts, especially if you were brought up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, when fat was a dirty word, the thought of a high-fat diet is repulsive to many and thought to be very unhealthy by so many. But we're finding that it's not really the case, and it depends on what fats. So an avocado is so full of fats, but they're healthy fats. And so, it's a great food for you and for the body. And there are other ones as well. Coconut, even though, it has not necessarily, it has basically a lot of fat. People worry about the HDL, LDL ratios and all. But again, coconuts are so healthy for us, coconut oil as well. And especially if you're cooking at a higher heat, it's better to use that than olive oil, as it doesn't get damaged as much as far as the heating under the higher heat. But there is so much we could do to help ourselves, and also basically save money and prepare ourselves mentally, spiritually, and physically by adopting, an intermittent fasting lifestyle. Or also a prolonged fasting lifestyle as well, depending on your circumstance. But intermittent fasting is so easy to do. It really, really is. And it's such an easy way to make a lifestyle adjustment that could save you money, save your health, keep you detoxed, give you a sharper, better, more clear focus during the day, and help prevent cancer as well as, adult onset diabetes. It is so effective in so many things, and it's something that I would encourage people to try out and see what they think and how they feel in doing it. And then this article is intermittent fasting and keto. Can you do them both? Yes, you can. Most definitely. And as I said before, you could do both intermittent fasting, keto, and add in a vegan or vegetarian diet. It gets trickier, but it can be done. So I wanted to share all these things with you guys. I hope this helps you out, guys, and gets some of you motivated in many different ways. It's amazing when we start doing these things and we start disciplining our minds a little bit and start experimenting with these things, how much better we can feel in so many different ways, physically, emotionally, and mentally. So I encourage you guys, give it a try. See, of course, check with your doctor and make sure you're healthy enough to try. Everybody always has to say that in this world. And, of course, everybody's situation is different. And there's so much depending upon the individual. But it is something that could definitely benefit, increase lifespan, give you actually more energy, and help to prevent disease as well as just simply save you money. That's just a win all across the board. So guys, as always, please thumbs up to support the channel, subscribe, click the bell for all the notifications, share with as many people as possible. May you guys always be blessed with abundant peace, love, happiness, health, and well-being. Namaste, my friends, and God bless.